This video is going to be a response to someone who decided to post, not verbatim this time, but a conspiracy theory that was invented out of whole cloth by a person who claimed that they were an authority figure, and it was posted anonymously on a, what I'm going to call a pro-patriot or pro-truther or pro-religious forum. The website name, or whatever, was on a website called Wade Burlinson.org, Esoteria Ministries blog. This was done December 6th on a Sunday at 6:33 a.m. in 2020. And I'm just going to read the first part of it. And don't interrupt me if you've heard this before, because if you looked for this video, this is literally the source for it. An anonymous person responding to some video or something about vaccines and presidents and whatever. Doesn't even matter what the content of the website was. This is something that someone cut and pasted so they could be taken at face value. I have a PhD in virology and immunology. So you have two doctorates in viruses, and the person's claiming immunology. Now, some of you know exactly what I just said and realize that that would require a person study the immune system and have a degree in it, a PhD, a separate PhD, and also in virology at an ideal, and know how long it takes to get a PhD. Now, you can get these degrees at the same time, but this would involve a great deal of work. The person also says that they're a clinical lab scientist. Are you a technician? Are you a head technician? Are you leading a project? This seems rather imprecise. And then the person said, I've tested 1,500 COVID-19 samples collected in Southern California, which means this person, again, it's an anonymous person making this claim without any possibility of double-checking whether or not they're full of shit. Said that these were supposed to be positive COVID-19 samples. Then the person says, when my lab team and I did the testing through a certain procedure and observations under scanning electron microscope, we found no COVID-19 in any of the samples. Now, some of you might actually know what I just said and be saying poppycock immediately, because the way you test for a virus is you use what the virus does and what it is. A virus on the outside has certain proteins or amino acids or whatever. And you can do a test by seeing if you can get an amount of this material, basically these particles called viruses, to react to something you put into the petri dish with them to bond to them, or some other method. And the way we sequence these things to find out their DNA, which is the important component, or do other methods for confirming we're dealing with a certain virus, don't involve a scanning electron microscope, but people like hearing that, especially if you bring up the procedure the person brings up. Koch's or Koch's postulates. Now I'm going to bring up exactly what that is. It's a set of 4 fairly simplistic rules that were created in 1884 by Robert Koch or Koch and Friedrich Loeffler. They didn't mention viruses at the time because nobody had discovered viruses. These procedures don't work to test for viruses. Now, again, if you have a PhD in virology, which means you're an expert in viruses, why would you use Koch's or Koch's postulates from 1884 that are ineffective in detecting a virus because they're designed to detect bacteria or parasites? So we're already at the point where this is not a person who's a virologist at bare minimum. And if it's an immunologist, again, if you're using Koch's postulates from the 1884 period, that would imply that you're a virologist or immunologist that does not choose to use procedures that are specifically for detecting viruses. Now, if you're an anti-vaxxer, specifically, because vaccines are primarily thought of as being used against viruses. That's not the only thing, but it's usually just that. And especially if you're a germ theory denialist, you will invoke these 4 criteria for establishing a causative relationship between a disease, causative agent, particle, microbe, whatever, and a disease. A pathogen causes a disease. If you see that disease, it can only be caused by that pathogen. Now, of course, you already know that you can have a head cold caused by lots of viruses. You can have the flu caused by lots of viruses. The symptoms aren't always going to match just one virus. Just like you can have a bacterial infection. You can have methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus staph that's super staph. You can also have aggressive staph, the type that attacks my body, that isn't MRSA. You could have ordinary Staphylococcus aureus, which doesn't have any of those characteristics. And they have very similar symptoms. Just each of them operates differently depending on what sort of antibiotic you use, or whether you have to use sulfa drugs, or they have an accelerated pathology. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, this is about bacteria. This is something that fully complies with Koch's or Koch's postulates. But that's again because they were originally created just for bacteria and just for parasites. And Koch changed them after they discovered viruses, and also after he discovered that a disease outcome can be caused by multiple different viruses and or diseases, causative agents. They don't have to have just one outcome. It's more of a lot of work to figure out what disease is causing what. It isn't that specific. And a scanning electron microscope is singularly useless for isolating a disease. What you get is germ theory denialists that say, oh, I believe in science. Let me bring up something from 1884 that is designed so it won't work on every single current understood disease just about. Because even Koch changed his postulates because he was wrong in 1884. This is like people bringing up criteria for proving the Earth is round by deliberately looking back far enough in time to find somebody who wasn't able to prove it was round and only using their information. Well, we want this experiment done, but that experiment can't test the shape of the Earth. Well, they know that. That's so they can win an argument. Germ theory denialists, or more accurately, people who advocate for you dying from simple diseases that are easily cured, don't actually believe there isn't any such thing as a disease or a virus or bacteria or germs. They don't. Most of them are just selling snake oil. They don't believe a goddamn thing. They don't care if they kill you. And a special subset of that are true believers that even though they do care about you and I dying, they keep repeating the hokum that came on the little bottle of their snake oil that says that unless you meet these really, really narrow parameters from 1884, diseases don't exist. And it does describe hundreds, even thousands of diseases that have only one cause. That because that's Koch's principle. It has to be done that way. But anyway, so why would someone claiming to be a virologist, a person who has a specialty in viruses which cannot be confirmed just with the 4 first principles for Koch's postulates, or an immunologist, or in this case a person claiming to be both, an immunologist, ignoring everything we know about how to diagnose a disease, or mentioning using a electron microscope when it would be useless? Now, I know I seem to have wasted 9 minutes of your time, but I haven't. In the first 2 fucking sentences, a person claims that out of the estimated 30 million people approximately in the United States, it's actually 29 million, out of all of them, this person finding 1,500 misdiagnoses proves the virus is not real. Because that's scientific. If you find 1,000 out of 29 million cases that have got the wrong diagnosis because the sample doesn't show the disease it's supposed to, that's proof of a conspiracy, and Al Gore is a shape-shifting alien frog. And he's gay. Or you would say The claim is that South California medical people made 1,500 mistakes in a state with millions of people in it. The samples didn't have any COVID-19 in 1,500 stinking samples. We now have come to the conclusion that COVID-19 was imaginary and fictitious based on 1,500 exactly samples that turned out not to have the disease that it's supposed to, because we used a scanning electron microscope that can't be used for that. And I'm going to claim that I'm a virologist and immunologist while I invoke 1884 technology that was admitted by the person who created those postulates that they wouldn't work because he made a simple, stupid mistake and corrected it. Now, this is attributed to various medical people. I'm not going to put them in the title of the video. There's no reason to. Every fucking one of you that's an advocate of spreading this bullshit on the internet, all of you saw the same posting. I have a PhD in virology and immunology. I'm a clinical lab scientist. I have tested 1,500 supposed positive COVID-19 samples, South California. All I have to do is put that into a title of a video and you'll find this thing. I dismantled this in a couple of sentences. Small sample size, 1,500 out of, again, 29 million people. We've had 500,000 deaths. The death rate for that is almost 2%. It's about 1.77 as of today. We're on the down curve, so we're getting fewer deaths and more cases. This is actually, makes it look better. Someone found on my channel, another channel, me quoting that the worst case scenario, if you claim the virus is not as bad as the treatment, if you claim the vaccine kills people, the number of people who are dead, who are supposed to have been associated with just recently having a vaccine before they died, was around 1,600 people. In a state of 3 million people who had received a little less than 1 million vaccinations. And I pointed out that the number ratio there, on average for the nation, is 0.002% death rate from the vaccine, when the death rate from the disease is 1.77%. It's almost exactly 1,000 times worse if you don't get the vaccine. So someone, of course, posted, so in other words, the risk of dying is about the same, even if you don't take the vaccine, which, of course, can't be the correct answer or correct response. That doesn't make any goddamn sense. Why would anybody post that? Because they ignored the entire purpose of the video, because they ignored what I said, and then this person posted this, I have a PhD in virology bullshit. They just posted a chopped up version of it, which gave me the inspiration to create the title, so you'll find this video. This is documented to have been posted as a shit post on some religious-oriented blog or whatever. I don't even know what it's about. It doesn't matter. The first posting, again, was December 6, 2020 at 6:33 a.m. And this posting, within a few sentences, discredited itself. And I've explained that to you by literally explaining why it can't make sense unless you're dealing with someone who claims to be a virologist or immunologist, but really they're all about disproving what they were taught in class and in school and deciding that their doctorate in the subject matters, in two subject matters, which actually takes a ridiculous amount of work, should be shit canned in favor of saying, I found 1,500 mistakes, therefore 29 million people never got a disease. Because science must be infallible, like people claiming their God is or something. No, what this is somebody feeding a lie to people, saying it was influenza A and B. By the way, the posting on that, influenza A and B, that's a very vague response. You're the one with a scanning electron microscope saying you can do this. Okay. No proof, no response afterwards. Just people saying, hey, he's on our side. Let's repost this. You even see people on Facebook, hundreds of people with different names claiming the same thing by cutting and pasting it, as if they are a virologist and immunologist. There's hundreds of them. Yeah, they're cutting and pasting exactly the same story without editing it. And I'm going to do the same fucking thing in this video. Along with the comments from another channel of someone berating me for not repeating this shit and believing it. And then they say, you're supposed to wake up because you're a sheeple for believing what you're told, but these guys just reposted the same stupid story that nobody ever bothered confirming. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with it.